My favorite time in the year, to gather so many dynamic, brilliant, inspiring women together in one place. I think it's really the way to celebrate International Women's Day, or, as I prefer to say, the International Day for Women's Rights, because it's not Women's Day. Every day is Women's Day. It's the day for women's rights, to fight for women's rights. So I'm so grateful to all of you for having taken time from your busy schedule and for accepting to join us physically for this event. We know, since 1 year, events with physical presence have become so rare, and even though so more precious. So I hesitated before doing this event, but then I thought that this is exactly what is missing usually. We were just discussing it. I feel that women need to meet more together, to network, to support each other, and there's nothing better than to meet physically and then to be able to network, get to know each other and support each other. So, I believe that women's rights and women empowerment are not issues that should be left only to people who dedicate their lives to it. There are amazing NGOs all over the world which do outstanding work to support women who are victims of violence and to fight for women's rights. But women empowerment also belongs to each and every one of us, men and women, young and old, no matter the country or the field that we work in. We can all take small actions in our field of work or in our personal lives to give a girl or a woman the confidence or little push that she needs to grow. So tonight we have a panel of amazing women who will discuss concrete measures that have proved to be effective to support gender equality at work. Of course, all of them could tell about their own journey, their path, and the obstacles, and the helps that they got. And we can do that later. But I thought if we have to come out from the evening with something concrete, something that we can take back with us, I thought we should focus more on concrete measures which have worked, that we know work and help us to move towards gender equality. And they are all from very different fields, and so I thought it would be interesting to discuss that tonight. So I'm very, very grateful to each of them for accepting to come and discuss on this issue. And what I will do is that I will leave the floor to Faye, but maybe each one can introduce themselves briefly. And I'm also especially grateful to Faye Souza for accepting the crucial role of moderator. Yes. And for bringing her talent and expertise into the discussion this evening. Thank you so much. And so the floor is yours, Faye. As you want to do it, I think maybe you can start and everyone can introduce themselves. I leave it to you.
So you can choose this one or that one. This one has a wire. Actually, I think we should speak easier to pass down. That way we can stay in one place. Start from this side.
First of all, thank you so much for having us, and I probably will thank on behalf of everyone, so we can just get on to introductions. My name is Rashmi DHANWANI. I run the organization called the Artist Company, so I represent the art niche on today's panel. The Artist Company is a strategic consultancy for the culture sector. We work with cultural organizations in India, advising them on strategy, research, and audience development in the arts. So that's me.
Thank you. So yes, I think the initiative is great, so I also want to thank you explicitly for having taken this initiative. So my name is Franciska DECUYPERE. It's a bit difficult, but if Franciska is enough. I am the head of BNP Paribas, a French bank that has different operations here in India. So I've been here since 3 years now. So with the panel, I'm going to try to share with you what we do on a topic that is very close to our heart, which is part of our diversity and inclusion program, and gender diversity is one that I particularly take care of. So I'll love to share with you what we do on that topic.
Thank you very much, Sonia, for having me here this wonderful evening today. I am Vasumati BADRINATHAN. I work in the education sector. I head the Department of French at the University of Mumbai. I also have another twin vocation, which is that of music. I'm a classical Carnatic singer. So Sonia chose me to represent the education field today, which is not so very much diverse from the arts either. So I shall bring my experience from whatever I do in life to this evening's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Thank you Sonia once again for inviting me too. Hi everyone, my name is Niyatii SHAH. I'd like to introduce myself first as a mother of 2 children, which is 17 and 10 tomorrow. A wife, a very supportive husband, and a daughter of very liberal parents. Professionally, I'm a trained sexuality educator, counselor, and author of 2 books for children on puberty, TEDx speaker, and now an intimacy coach. And that's a long one, but thank you so much.
Consul and Sonia for having us all here, because everybody is scared, but I think it's your initiative and your faith that you could connect so many women even in these times. I'm really happy and grateful to be here. I'm Abha Singh, and I was in the High Court before I came here, and in my black gown and my white tie, I was thinking, when did I decide to join the law firm? I was a civil servant for 20 years. I started as a bureaucrat and I ended as a lawyer, but I don't call myself a lawyer. More, I call myself a gender justice crusader. And the reason why I joined this field, why I left a powerful job such as civil service, was because I felt women have always been silenced. And I call myself as a voice for the silenced millions, and that is what I'm trying to do in the court. Thank you.
I'm Harshbeena ZAVERI. I'm the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of a bearing company in the automotive field for the most part. We have manufacturing facilities in various parts of India, some of them very remote, and we have subsidiaries all over the world. And I think that's been very interesting for me because I actually studied social anthropology and cultural anthropology. And I have always focused more on my second major, which is migration, basically into urban areas. And for me, a company, an organization, any smart ecosystem, one kind of value system is structure into another one. And you can literally see when people walk in through the door how their behavior changes. And we really leverage that a lot in our company. I've been lucky enough to have a subsidiary in Thailand, which is 125 employees. APEC really rules the world when it comes to women. Of course, everywhere we're behind. But that part of the world is substantially, statistically, in every which way ahead. And what we've been doing a lot of, and I'm not diverting it off, sorry, but I do want to get the cultural perspective of the world with this, is comparing Thailand to our subsidiary in Germany and our subsidiary in the US and in India. And I think that's what this gathering that Sonia put together is really so representative of. How are we fighting these different battles separately and together? And I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you, Sonia and Juliet, for having me here. I'm just so happy to be on a real panel, to meet real people. So thank you for everybody. I'm Guneet MONGA. I'm a film producer. I run a company called Sikha Entertainment, and I have produced around 35 features, around 70 shorts. I've had 9 films at Cannes Film Festival. Lunchbox being many more. And Lunchbox being one of the most loved.
And we'll all get roles in your next movie.
Sure. Lunchbox and Masan were my French co-productions. Lunchbox and Masan were our French co-productions. In fact, the treaty with India was signed in 1985, and I was the first one to use it in 2012. And I was the second one to use it for Masan. Lunchbox is the first. So I've had a really lovely, empowering relationship with the French film industry, and I'm on a mission to change the stats of women representation as storytellers, as people behind the camera. A certain stats came to my view last year that less than 5% of women are directors. So that led us to create a collective called Indian Women Rising that I have co-created with Ekta Kapoor, Rujula Kapoor Sheikh, Tahira Kashyap, and myself. And we are on a mission to change that. And it is just early days, but definitely you're going to see more filmmakers that are women out there. We are the one focusing spotlight, because I just think if we don't, then who will? So we have to take the baton in our end and just mindfully make sure that there are more women and more safe spaces and more storytellers, and the woman gaze is more celebrated in an extremely commercial industry like ours. So we just got started, but a long way to go.
I'm so proud of Guneet Monga. And it's actually testimony to how well she can read her audience, which is what she does best. Because she mentioned Khan, but didn't mention that she was at the Oscars.
She's very diplomatic.
So she knew that she's at the French restaurant. Let's focus on the French Film Festival. My name is Faye. I'm a journalist. Currently in India, the most hated, hunted, and perhaps also endangered species.
And love for that.
Thank you. I echo what Guneet said. It's just really nice to be among other humans for a change and not be talking to people through empathy.
Pixelized humans.
Yes. It's nice to not spend most of the time on this panel saying, can you hear me? Am I audible? You seem to be frozen. You're on mute. We can see you, stop doing that. But it's also it's an amazing pleasure to sit down and just talk to women. I honestly believe that when women just get together, there's an automatic community that's just formed. Because across the world we face similar challenges, maybe at different degrees. But there's an empathy that we can only bring to each other. And the lineup today is so amazing. I also want to acknowledge Trisha Shetty at the back, who is a champion. It's really, really nice to be here. It's nice to meet all of you on the panel. Just take a quick minute to sort of put into perspective what I'm thinking here. It's amazing that we have to talk about women's rights in 2021. One would think that, after women won the vote in some countries back in the 1900s, that we've made some progress. But I think the last 1 year of the COVID lockdown in India specifically has taught us that sab moha maya tha. It was all smoke. Because when tough times came, women got hit hard. Women lost more jobs than men. They're less likely to get those jobs back. They lost, in our country, 20 million families lost access to birth control in our country, which means women didn't get the condoms that they were getting for free, they didn't get the birth control pills that they were getting for free. They are going to have, according to the UN, 20 million unwanted babies this year. They were locked up in their houses with men who had come back from the city, and marital rape is not against the law in our country. Girls who didn't go to school didn't get that one midday meal that would make sure that they're not anemic. Girls got pulled out of school this year. Decades of hard work of making sure that girls in our country go to school was undone in 1 year. everybody had to study online. And we brag about the smartphone penetration in India, but the smartphones are owned by men. And so the whole family has one smartphone. And so if a little girl has to study and do her schooling on that smartphone, this is dad, older brother, mom, little girl. That's the pecking order in Indian families. So how many little girls actually studied anything this year? Estimates say 25% of the total population. It's likely they'll never go back to school. And if we want to just acknowledge the social strata that we have the good fortune of occupying, I know personally women who've been to Ivy League universities, who work in great companies and very powerful jobs, who are waking up at the crack of dawn to do jharu, pocha, bartan, cooking, washing and getting all of it done before the family wakes up, and then working from home, and then looking at the homework, and then making sure that everybody was eating, and then making sure the groceries were coming in, because I realize, shockingly, a lot of Indian men still think that housework is done by Disney birds that fly in through windows. It's not magical when they wake up in the morning. You know. The lack of equity in our workspaces and our homes was naked for everyone to see in the last 1 year. And we have so much more catching up to do now because of the amount of that we've been set back, that there couldn't have been a stronger time to have this conversation. To talk about what we're going to do to fix this. Because let's be honest, no one's going to do this for us. We just have to do it ourselves. Because we can't afford to wait another 40 years for someone to get around to it. We have to do it now. Sorry?
Where the tea is.
Yes. Yes. Samir and everyone on the panel has been kind enough to take some time out to think about what's worked in their fields in their careers, in their fields of expertise, and what can be done now to use that to push it forward. So the idea is really for all of us to take something back that we can action in our own lives. So I really want to start with Abha Singh, because I want to talk about the law. I'm fascinated by the law. We also live in a country where the highest judge of our highest court asked if a rape victim asked the accused of rape if he's willing to marry the victim. And I can't come back from that. I just can't.
Even I have a Faye that Chief Justice of this country can ask that to a child, she was 16 years and she was raped. And in the court he was asking that the rapist, that can you marry her? And when the fact is that the court is only supposed to look into the legal mandate. You cannot be judgmental, you cannot go beyond the mandate. And also, criminal law cannot be compounded. Offences like rape, offences which have severe punishment cannot be compounded, they cannot be out of court settlement. So I think it was a very wrong narrative, and I'm surprised that the politicians, the legislature in this country has kept quiet. So I agree with you. One thing when you were talking about women being really losing out in the lockdown. Yes, it was women who lost their jobs. And when I was doing a webinar with NCW chairperson, and I brought to her notice that another thing which is troubling women in lockdown is like you were doing work from home. And women called me up to say, our boss in his night suit and pajamas is talking work to us, sitting in his bed with a glass of whiskey, and we don't know where to look. So then, this was the issue I raised, and then the NCW said, yes, POSH, sexual harassment at workplace is going to extend even to your homes during lockdown. So what I'm trying to say, if we raise issues, we do get solutions, and at least that part that when you're talking to a lady who's working from home, the boss has to know, the male colleague has to know that you should be well dressed and it cannot get 11 in the night. So somewhere laws make a difference, and in fact, after Nirbhaya, the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 which made stalking an offence. Before that, stalking was never an offence. People thought in India, if you're trailing a girl, if you're teasing her, it's part of romance. And not realizing that maximum acid attack which happens to women, it starts with stalking.
So law has made a difference, should make a difference, but there are such a complexity of laws that the common people don't understand, and executing them is a problem. So definitely, that's one issue I would talk of, but after...
Would you say affirmative action or reservation for women or representation of women in government, in panchayat, in state is perhaps something that has worked?
Yes, of course. In fact, if you see 33% reservation in panchayat has really empowered women. Initially, when you had the women panchayat leaders, they were in their bungards, and people said it is the husband who's running the show. But now figures tell us that women have empowered themselves. Although it's quite sad that today the Supreme Court has just 2 female judges. Out of 34, there are only 2 women. And when we are 50% of the population, at least, if not 50%, 33% is what we ask. But in the services, there are barely 18%. In bureaucracy, I would say in the IAS and all, where the real power flows, there are not even 10% women. So if...
How many access
that you can count, and in fact there are 2% only women CEOs, international level. Why I talk of India? World over the issue is this, and when we talk of equal pay for equal work and equal pay for equal qualification, the World Economic Forum says that we are going to take 256 years to reach equal pay for equal work. So even to get equal education to our male counterparts is going to take 100 years. And so positive action is required.
So Faye, taking the same point you mentioned about the giant gravity, all that, to the corporate world, we all know that whatever smartly 19%, okay, and the US is 21%, which is still the highest diversity in management, and then you have Europe, which is 17%. But on this front, because of the policy initiatives that they have, Europe leads for women on board, like 27.5% of the women on board in Europe. Because of policy. Add to that.
I think what both of you are saying, I wanted to mention the fact that I wasn't for positive discrimination, saying because it's not great if you hear that a woman has been chosen because she's a woman and not because of her competences. You just don't want that. But over time, I've seen that things really start moving when you have certain quota, when you have, for example, if you would have an obligation that you have as many female judges as men judges, that would make an awful difference. And I think we really need now those quota in order to make progress much faster. And then we need, of course, to think how can we live without a quota, because it can only be a temporary thing. But if we don't have it, it's going to take centuries.
Does it work in a hiring process? Is this something you've used on the ground?
And the point, actually, Francesca, that I was going to say that the companies that have done this have higher profitability. And there is multiple statistics that I can put in terms of return on equity, in terms of, there's this amazing study where all they did, they made a virtual watch list, right, a portfolio, and they invested their portfolio into companies the moment either a woman CEO came on or 30% of the senior management representation, including board, including this quota number, was there. And do you know how much more that virtual index earned in SHA? I give you part of that Gender 3000 study by Credit Suisse, which is one of the most amazing studies that continues to be done every 10 years. So first you need them there, then you can prove like Panchayati Raj, how they will change things. Yes, they'll be forced to listen to their husbands and their fathers and whatnot, but for 1 year. After 1 year, the second year, they get their voices.
But I'm convinced that it's having that parity, having women in the decision-taking organs gives just better decisions, more balance, because there is a better discussion, there are more different viewpoints that are confronted, and you take better decisions. But to come back to your question, which was, is your company implementing it? So first of all, there is a law in France by which you have, on the board level, you have to start with a 50-50. And that's great if it starts from the top.
But we have a CEO that is really believing in gender diversity. And so he has put us a target that he wants us to be 50-50 in 25 on all levels of the company. Not overall, because in some companies we have a 50-50 overall, but it has to be on all levels. And each year he puts an objective, a target, by 2-3% higher on all levels, and it works. If the message comes from the top, and if he brings it on the table each time we're talking succession plans, he's the one that asks, and how many female candidates are prepared for this job. So when it comes from there, then you see it cascades down in the whole company, and everybody starts acting and starts taking decisions in that sense. Yeah. No, it has to come from the top, and we need objectives.
I'll just add one small thing to that. In fact, I got this report. This is done by World Bank, and this is Women, Business and Law. And this report comes out from World Bank every year, and it analyzes laws and regulations affecting women's economic inclusion in 190 economies. And 8 indicators structured around women's interaction with law. So these are these things: mobility, workplace, pay, marriage, parenthood, entrepreneurship, assets and pension. And what I want to say, there are only 8 economies that have scored a perfect 100 out of the 190 economies. France is one of them. Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Latvia, Luxembourg and Sweden. So just 8 countries where we've been able to have a 100 score, which means we are very far, not only India but world over. So we actually require a top-bottom approach, like from the top only. If it comes down, change will come. So positive discrimination is required. Indian Constitution talks of reservation. We have given on caste basis, but I don't know why politicians don't want to give reservation to women in India. Maybe they feel that a woman's place is only in the kitchen, or they feel that she's so capable, she's so competent, that if she comes there in the parliament, she would take their space.
And we about that. I'm going to talk about education. I looked at some of the numbers on education in India. We've had a higher participation of women in higher education in colleges. Simultaneously, we've had a lower participation in the workforce. So we've got more girls, more women going to college, graduating, but fewer of them actually lasting after the workforce, and there's something wrong. Have you figured it out?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. But what I see from the field, and with more than 3 decades of experience working in this sector as an educationist, as a language educator, all my colleagues are women. In the corridor that I work in the University of Mumbai, if I just count on my fingers, I see only women. There are no men teachers there. Of course, this depends from department to department, but if you look at it overall, the education sector, the teaching sector in higher education, colleges and universities, has been by and large a feminine profession. And there is this idea that, women are made for teaching and all those cliches that are attached to it. But stereotypes apart, all our students are women. We have just this year in a master's program, we've had 17 prospective students, out of which just 1 boy. And this is not surprising because this 1 boy has come after many years. So we have a lot of girls that are interested in it, and statistics apart, I think the study of language and just also being part of higher education, obtaining a degree, is so very empowering for these girls, and that I have been seeing at very close quarters. It's not about how good they are in their studies or what grades they get, but the very fact that they have access to this space where there is knowledge creation, where they can contribute to knowledge, where they can acquire new skills, where they can go out into the world emboldened with more confidence. And especially as a language educator, when I see they're learning languages, and languages are vested with a power like nothing else has. It gives you confidence to speak, to communicate, which is one of the most essential skills for human beings that distinguishes us from all other living species. So, and they become and they acquire these skills. And they have access to culture, they have access to literature. For example, they're learning French. They're not just learning the language. You are learning culture, which is indissociable. Therefore, you have access to something completely new. You're looking with renewed eyes upon your own cultures. And then, empowered with all this knowledge, they also challenge themselves. And that's what I perceive in front of me. Because we get students from all strata of society, with all kinds of background. It's not just their economic and financial background, it's also their upbringing, the families that they come from, etc. And they feel very happy to be there and to have access to this sort of knowledge. So they also are confronted with their own traditional rules. They want to rewrite their own lives. They want to go out there and work, and most of them find some kind of a job. Either they become teachers, or they're working in some enterprise, or they're running their own show with classes, etc. And I think through higher education and through access to educational spaces, we're doing a wonderful thing for students. We have a reservation for women, and we never have to look at that reservation because they're all girls, lots of girls that come to the department, to the university, and they're doing fairly well for themselves. They're working really, really well. So I'm extremely happy when I see this happening. Perhaps this will not match with all the figures that you may have, and there might be a discord there, and some of the things may be appalling, but the real life thing that I see in front of me in my day-to-day workspace, there I am extremely happy that you are able to create an equitable space for learning. Because whether it's a boy or it's a girl, to me as a teacher, as an educator, as somebody who's vested with that power to offer them that knowledge and to open up vistas for them, I think everybody's on the same platform, and it gives them it gives me great joy to see that there is positive impact upon these girls.
I want to also come to Niyatii as an educator. What do you believe has worked for women in your space of work?
So what I reckon with ma'am is that there are a lot of girls who want to go there, who want to learn, who want to be in the space where they want to see what their potential is. But at the same time, with my sector, when it comes to sex and sexuality, the community impact has worked. When there is one woman who has taken that one step to speak about it, there will be another 10 who will want to come and sit with her, want to listen to her, then figure out what is her status, and then want to be where she wants to be. So whether it's media, whether it's movies, so when one woman, whether it's an actress or whether it's a product, when they speak about that women can, then they believe I can. So we have that deep conditioning where we think we can't. So even if I have taken this step of wanting to educate the parents, the children, the couples, that sex and sexuality is not about standing on a stage and raving about yay, sex and yay. It's not about that. It's about knowing yourself, knowing your spouse, teaching your children about hygiene, teaching your children about who they are, how they want to see their partners, how they want to be with their partners. All of this becomes very comfortable for them when there's a community together. They don't want to do it alone. So community impact has been huge, especially for the women, wherein they feel safe, that okay, I'm not alone, I won't be judged alone, I won't be rejected alone. There's a whole pack who's doing it, and I probably might not be seen. So there is this story which is also a video that went viral. There has to be just that one leader who just stands up and starts dancing, and then slowly everybody follows, and this is something like that. So with the books also that I have written on puberty, one is for girl and one is for boy, which is equally written. The mothers are picking up the books for their daughters. Now here I have a little bit of change where the boys are not being educated by the same mothers who know that children should be educated. Safe and unsafe touch, which is good and bad touch, are taught to girls more than the boys. So when it comes to within the family, the women are supporting the women, which is the mother and the daughter. But when it comes to bhabis or nanans or friends, we want to judge each other. Oh, she's wearing this, or she's showing her strap, or she's showing her cleavage. So more than the men, It's either we are bringing in together or we are in the same space, we are also going away from one another. So I think when it comes to topics like taboo topics, what works is when collectively somebody says, do it, we should do it. So I remember when I was in my school and Stacey had come with their sex education class for 30 minutes, they told us you can wear white pants. And I'm sure all of us at least once in our lifetime tried wearing white pants to see whether does this really work or not. So it's you when you're sitting together. That's what works when it comes to education specifically.
So Guneet, the idea of, and your t-shirt is at your wrist, so for those who can't see, Guneet's t-shirt reads "Women Telling Women's Stories," and this is really powerful because, and we've seen a marked change of when women filmmakers write roles for women, when women journalists cover issues of women, when artists actually portray women away from the real case. It's completely different experience.
I think we're somewhere. I just have to say that I did not understand feminism. I think we are all products of patriarchy. So the Me Too movement really helped me articulate and understand my own gaslighting journey, everything that I had internalized. It's like, hey, wait a minute, maybe this is not on me, this is not my fault. So, it's true that, when one woman rises, she opens the door for 10 more. And I feel for a very long time, I didn't know what that means. Because for a very long time, we have, seen that we are each other's competition. Because we are so few and jobs are so few. But shifting that pole has really empowered me deeply, finding a tribe, doubling down on each other, exactly like what you said. And I think on daily basis, learning what feminism means and how much can I negotiate, how much can I push back, what is my I still think, I need perspective on so many things. I'm like, is it okay to ask? Is it okay? So I think that patriarchy is deeply rooted from middle class India to come up, to make movies, to be a producer. It's a new learning every day, and I'm actually, you start, in fact, I want to say that a film that I was executive producer on, called Period End of Sentence, it won the Oscar in 2019. It's a testimony of how, thank you. We won the Oscar for the best short doc. It's on Netflix, please watch it. It is really a testimony on what this tribe can do. When one woman, it was 12 to 14-year-old girls in LA wanted to make a film. And they ended up empowering girls all the way in Harvard. And it was a marathon. It was like, they raised money, these guys built the machine. So it was like, when you look back at the whole journey, it's literally a very successfully run marathon where one woman is empowering another. We are not each other's competition, we are each other's support system. The more you shine, the more you rise, the more I will rise. And that is something that I have learned. Coming on female gaze in films, this is also something that, as journalists are bringing up, as getting more and more informed, and as filmmakers, so I'm also learning this, and I so deeply understand it, like how a Wonder Woman is shot, which is directed by a woman, and how a Halle Berry in Catwoman, how she's shot. So what are you glorifying, and what is it that you can't do with as successful franchise as Wonder Woman? So that it is so specific, that gaze, that I feel we have globally just started. In a few years, we are just bargaining our space And it's sad, it's so late, but it's also kind of now, and it's on us to make it more accessible, acceptable for every community. That's why Indian Women Rising, that's why more structures, systematic structures of growth into any profession. And sense of mentorship, sense of building a tribe is the most important. When you get one more girl to say, you go girl, you're just like, okay, I can do this. You just don't get that.
One of the IS toppers was asked in an interview, the IS interview, that a woman is a woman's worst enemy. You know why? I'll tell you 498A the Dowry. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you this. The Dowry law which came 498A where it says asking for dowry and giving dowry is an offence. In that, 2 lakh, the latest figure said that there are 2 lakh people who have been arrested in the 498A, and out of that 50,000. I mean, 1/4 are women. So that means there are mother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, grandmothers. So, that's how the facts are. So we definitely need, I agree with Guneet when she says, we need to hold hands, we need to come together. Because if we are not going to hold each other's hands and take us forward, or it's a long way, because as I said, you said of school dropping out in lockdown, so many child, they were married off because the midday meal stopped. And let me tell you, there is 100% admission, 100% registration at the primary level. Every parent puts their daughter in school, and I'm talking of the rural India because that is where we are. Because of that midday meal, because the parents feel that one meal could be taken care of. But 40% girls drop out of schools by the time they reach 7th or 8th standard. Primarily, number one, because they don't have toilets in the school, sanitation is an issue, and second is safety. They have to walk 3-4 kilometers. So these are the realities which we face and we have to overcome. And that is where government's positive steps are required. France, you have a ministry for gender justice. You've taken a policy that your foreign diplomats, 50% are going to be women. And that is why you have a score of 100. But we in India, we are only a few people who are raising our voice, and Faye rightly says that we can have the income tax, we can have the ED at our doors anytime.
I just want to respond to this idea of women being women's voice. I think we have to also realize that the patriarchy that we're currently now standing up against has been around for centuries. And there are many women who are hostages to that system and who have to be part of that system in order to survive in that system. And that survival may entail being part of the problem. But I prefer to look at the number of women who are part of the solution and the number of women who have opened doors for other women. I was part of a panel on the victory of Kamala Harris becoming Vice President of the United States. Right? And I remember when that happened, all of the people on Twitter who were asking, why are you guys making such a big fuss, were the men. Because they didn't get it. They didn't get how a woman on the other end of the world becoming Vice President of another country meant something to us. Because she broke down a wall, and every time a woman breaks down a wall, we can all see what's on the other side. You cannot become what you cannot see. Today there is a woman who is the Vice President of the United States who looks like us, she looks like you. The power of that, right? To be able to just see that. And I think that it's this, and I see Lassie actually shattering, when women are actually judged to be good or bad based on their performance. Good and bad is gender agnostic. There's some really terrible people who happen to be women, and some really terrible people who happen to be men. Then gender has nothing to do with it. When Serena Williams behaves badly on court, let's judge her as an athlete with a temper, not as a black woman. Okay. So there will be women who will get arrested because they did bad things. But what happens is, this is the interesting part. We all know Kamala Harris is going to spend the next 4 years being under so much scrutiny. She's going to have to be the most high-functioning, efficient saint in the world. She cannot make a mistake, because if she does, all of us will get written off. The scrutiny with which we look at women, and then generalize that behavior to the entire population, say, oh, I'm never going to have a woman again because she took a day off for a meeting. Right? That is the journey that we're making. And we're going to meet some terrible people who happen to be women who are part of the problem. But we'll also meet amazing people. And we'll meet amazing men who are part of the solution. And I think that we have to just keep pushing forward. Yes, I'm just going to invite you haven't spoken at all about art and what art does.
That's okay, I'm happy to give the floor to all women. But I just wanted to sort of contextualize a little bit about the sector that I am, to a certain extent, of course, Guneet also comes from, is the culture sector in India. We are part of an informal economy. We don't have a policy that dictates how the sector needs to be supported, run, organized, grown. Culture as an area of responsibility is across 9 different central departments, including the Ministry of Minorities. There is the Ministry of Handicrafts. There's, of course, now Ministry of Culture, which over several years became a Ministry of Culture. And also, I think, the Ministry of Industries, because the design sector comes under that. When you talk about the culture sector, you think of music, dance, and other arts. You don't necessarily think of film, because we don't think of the culture sector as the creative economy and the creative industries, which is a term that I hate because I think it's a Western import. We don't have any academic discourse to question the cultural studies context in our country. And that becomes problematic for us when we are working in this space and thinking about what growth means for us. Because it's a part of an informal economy doesn't mean it's not powerful. The handicraft sector is the second largest employer in the country. But it's a sector. The only other creative sector in the country which has an industry status is the film industry, that also as late as 1997. So we are talking about a really diffused culture sector whose products we are all proud of. And we wear it as a label on us, but we don't understand the complexity of the way it works. Now there are positives to the informalities that allows for certain gaps and fissures where people who don't have legitimacy are able to have a voice and tell stories. Women. The farmer is a man, the weaver is a man, but the weaver is also a woman. And they are able to work in these spaces and are able to make income from these spaces and support the families that they come from. Now, this is the sector and context that we are working in. And I wanted to mention in our email conversation, I mentioned the code on social security, and we were talking about this one factor, one measure, and speaking to your ask about what the concrete measures that we can take, right? Is about the fact that what is it that we can do that makes a change for us in this really informal sector. And I think a huge part of that dialogue is really recognizing that we have a voice in several conversations that are happening when we are not sought for our opinion. So what I was mentioning in our email chat before this was the code on social security, which is about to replace 9 major labor laws. The draft code was put together, I think, as late as September 2019, but then again in October 2020, there was a revised version. And it has, for the first time, includes the concept of gig economy workers, which means workers who are working part-time on contract and are not covered under any other major laws. For the first time in India, we allowed that. Taking it back to the handicraft sector as an example, of the film sector, where people working in the sector, a lot of them women. When you talk about the arts, you're saying women, right? But these are women who don't have a lot of the benefits that other formal sectors governed by labor laws have. So a code of this sort becomes really important for us to have a voice in. Now, who are the industries that are asked to be a part of these conversations? E-commerce, platform workers like Zomato and Amazon, not the culture sector. How do we have a voice? No idea, because we are across 9 different central level departments. So I'm talking about the complexity of where we stand and what we need to do. And this code is very interesting because it does have lots of measures for us. It actually also covers the maternity benefits, which otherwise you don't have access to, health insurance, disability insurance, and some of the creative sectors that we're a part of tend to be high-risk ventures without real health and safety standards. We've heard of fires and events and things of that sort. But as women, we don't always have safety mechanisms that allow us to take benefit of those systems and structures. But we're still working and contributing in the economy. None of which is visible because we don't have a department of statistics that looks at cultural statistics. That's the reason why we as Alex got into measuring culture and looking at research in the culture sector, because there's nothing that exists. So that's the conundrum that we're coming from. But let me take it back to actually it's kind of funny, I'm talking about the culture sector, and there are 4 of us here who have a stake in the sector. You're a musician, of course, Guneet, you spoke about cultural anthropology that you've studied, and so technically you do have a stake, and let me take this back to your point about women telling stories, right? One of the things we started in the lockdown was an emergency fund for artists who weren't able to make a living during the pandemic, and we managed to raise about 8 lakhs, and we gave small amounts of emergency funding, not to make art, but just to survive, so 10,000, 15,000 rupees. And one of the stories was of this theatre artist from a smaller town in central India, who wrote to us to say that she had fought with her family to want to work in theatre because she really wanted to work in theatre. So she's breaking several glass ceilings, as you're talking about, to come here and tell her story. She came to Bombay, of course, within 6 months the lockdown happened and she had to go back. And her ask, unlike several other artists who had asked, was only 7,000 rupees because she wanted a flight ticket to go back. Now, by that time, the trains had not started. So she was like, at least with the flight I could manage and go fast. I wouldn't have to struggle and wait for the trains. And I remember she said that in her application, she said, I have worked very, very hard to get to this point where I fought with my family to come here. So, in order for us to have a larger voice and a stake, and if we are able to make that stake happen, for instance with a dialogue on the Code on Social Security, is that we're not only allowing women to tell stories, but also change stories and make new stories. And that's the power I think the arts has. But we don't have a voice in the policy framework, which tends to be really challenging. And unfortunately, I can't even give you statistics to support how important we are in this space. So yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I do want to add something to this very interesting thing that you brought up. And this has been happening since the last, 102 years, Although at that time, women didn't have the kind of status that they do enjoy today, at least in the urban zones. Even in those days, 50, 60 years back, women living in the city of Mumbai did not have the rights that they have now. But then they were given access to this very profound culture that we own in our society. And as I grew as a musician, I sort of found it very intriguing that in Carnatic music we are based on an extensive repertoire of compositions. And all these compositions that we present are by men. So I was just very curious to know, where are the women? They're all singing, or they're performing, or they're instrumentalists, but surely there must be some contribution by women to the body of work that is these compositions, these kritis, and the varnams and other things that we present and here. And once this program of mine, some 10, 15 years that I started working on this, I received calls and material by post from so many women saying, I compose too. So you see, there is so much happening, and this is not to bear a feminist flag, but it's just out of curiosity. And many of these male composers write about a woman. The woman is the protagonist in their songs. The songs are written by men, and this is how we have been, having a repertoire which is male-centric. So there is a lot that women are doing. It does remain invisible, and sometimes a curious person comes up to investigate in that. But I find the field of art and culture as we see it on a day-to-day basis is extremely interesting because it gives an equitable platform to the girl child and the boy child to go and learn music. And then to pursue it also. Today, of course, it's become kind of, it doesn't pose a problem if someone wants to become a musician. I'm still talking very much about the urban zones because the rural platform, the dynamics are completely different, so you cannot compare apples and oranges. But in the urban zone, I think music is a great level. It really is a great level.
I just want to open this up now. I can reach, can you hear me in the back? So keep one mic on this side and one mic on that side. So, I have a question. Yes. Can you pass this down?
Thank you for introducing myself first. Since I feel what I'm a Consul from Afghanistan and Mumbai. My question is, when there was no women leaders around the world in visited, you guys have a leader in Gandhi in India, which is almost 35 years ago. What took you guys so long? I mean, in other countries, you even didn't have a great leader from someone. But the woman, you know, their economy-wise, if you say, social-wise, and also you say that their rights are there. But India, compared to other countries, they are so far behind. What I was trying to say, because Afghanistan has been in the war for the past 42 years. So there's a civil war and a lot of ups and downs happening. And that's why, you know, education doesn't reach villages. Also, religion, culture, and everything plays a role. I was traveling through forest city of Maharashtra 2 weeks ago to a village called Gola. And I see that there also it's a man's world that you cannot see any women over there, not on the street, not in the what do you say, markets, and also. So I'm sorry, I'm thinking a little bit longer, but my main question is that the government and also the politicians, I believe, should step up. Maybe they have to force them, because, and also, in a country like India, the education doesn't reach for commerce, so other countries will not.
Yeah. What we talk of quotas, 5 times the women reservation bill has been introduced in the parliament, but women have been unable to get that 33%. In fact, countries like Afghanistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, they have given 30% and have a bigger representation of women in the parliament. So of course, India has lacked in the political sphere, but in the education, if you see, women have really gone ahead. The female literacy is almost now 65%. Whatever it is still improving. And I would say why it's taking time is primarily because of democracy. You know, like there will be a counter narrative all the time, and you know, like China, when we compare with China, they're better because there's been a dictatorship and you order something and it goes down immediately. But India being so democratic that we always have some issues, and yes, we are responsible for our problems because we women have never been a powerful vote bank. We have not decided that we will vote for women and make them reach the parliament and take up, you know. So, yeah, no, but you know, like somewhere they've been fooled, whatever it is, you know. The men, again, the patriarchy, the husband tells you, no, you vote for on these lines. But if you have your own 50%, if women are there in the parliament, even when Sabrimala happened, that women would enter the temple for prayers, the bench, there was just one woman. And even there was just out of 5 judges, there was just one lady member. And when Shani Shubnapur happened or Haji Ali happened, there was not a single woman. So you don't have women there at the right places to take decisions. And the men, as I said, the women reservation bill was torn in the parliament. And we kept quiet and we went back and voted for the same men who tore our women reservation bill. So I think we are responsible for what it is.
So there are studies to find out why this has happened. Indira Gandhi, while she was a woman leader at a time when there weren't too many women leaders, the route she took was different. Her father was the first Prime Minister of this country. She was raised to be, you know, she was different from one of us trying to be Prime Minister. The actual voting and whether or not we put women in Parliament depends on how many women get tickets to contest elections. Most political parties in state, in local elections and in parliamentary elections do not give tickets to women, and they argue winnability. They say, no, women don't win. Women lose elections. It's a waste. If you put a woman to contest, she's going to lose and I'll lose that spot. Whereas research has shown us that women have a higher rate of winnability than men.
They should fight for a quota.
That's what every result is quota.
So that's similar to the corporate world. I mean, we're talking about the political world or front-organization or the corporate world. I think two fundamental issues in my opinion. One is that patriarchy runs like that. Exactly like you're saying. It's not any other way anywhere. But the gender bias, unless we also start making men, and there's a huge, and I'm sure everyone in education will agree with me. Whenever I went to a shobha, I was the first one in France to a shobha, because they had 56% women, and we really wanted to change the future for them. And the first time I went there to speak, the room was full of men. As many, no, I'm saying it was also had women. And the men were very vocal, and they were there because they cared about this issue. And the reason for that is because we had a compulsory gender sensitization program, which was equal for the men and women. And the men spoke up, and they spoke up about how they had never actually sat in a room, because we had a lot of people from villages and from all over. And the point I'm making is that we do a great disservice to men too. And the minute they make that part of the conversation, for example, the Me Too movement. As a social anthropologist, I did a lot of studies on sexual orientation, sexual abuse. And in India, the percentage of sexual abuse for men probably caps women. Probably higher. It is not something that we talk about. So we need to bring that into the conversation. We are going to then talk about sexual abuse. And that's not about women being sexually abused. And the other point that I want to make is when we look at policies, for example, that was one of the questions today, right? What kind of policies do you feel work? Policies which are gender neutral, so giving men leave to take care of their own health, giving them leave to take care of their sick child. Don't have policies that make women go home and want what they're anyway doing, okay? The minute you give exactly the same leave to the men, it's a hugely different outcome that you get. Completely different. You'll be surprised. When companies actually have these policies and we actually just framing it, so we're doing a lot of studies on other companies, more men take advantage of that, and women in that couple get ahead in their careers. Because you can't say, oh, you have to do this, but your company gives leave for this and mine doesn't.
So corporate policy that categorizes women as primary caregivers for in all categories. You wanted to say something?
Since because we were in the political domain, so I just wanted to maybe come back to positive discrimination and just talk a little bit of the French example, because it's not as ideal as you. But just to, traditionally, France was always very suspicious against positive discrimination because of the constitutional principle of the indivisibility of the people. You cannot divide the people, and equality in front of the law. So it was always the argument to go against positive discrimination. And the result was that France was lagging behind all the European Western nations in terms of the number of women in parliament, for example. In 1997, we had 10% of women in parliament. So we decided there was a movement to try to fight, and we decided to ask for positive discrimination. So there was a very tough debate in the parliament, with the Legislative Assembly wanting to have a parity law, and so we had a very tough debate, and finally in 2000 we managed to have the parity bill turned into law, but it's been toned down by the upper house, of course, which is male-dominated, very conservative, very, so they toned it down. But since 2000, we have this parity law, which makes it compulsory for political parties to present lists with equal number of men and women. Now, the result, what we saw is that in the elections where there were leaders, the results have been there. We've seen much more women, present. But the elections where it was not compulsory and not legally binding, the progress hasn't been seen really. So I agree with Francesca. I think we need to go through period of quotas and positive discrimination to open the doors, because otherwise it would take centuries to open the doors. And then, yes, once a woman opens the door, it gives, an example, and it gives, ideas to young girls. But I also agree that we need to work on also the environment. And for example, in June 2021, France will increase the paternity leave from 11 days to 25 days. So now, since 2014, fathers are entitled to 11 days of paternity leave. Now it will be 25 days. So slowly, but I mean, it's not, it's not a lullaby country. It's tough. And especially in politics, because politics has been, dominated by men, and so they are not very willingly, giving their space. But there is another law which has been very important in 2012, Loi Sauvadet, and it makes it compulsory for all the public services, the ministries and the administration, to have 40% of women in the first senior management appointees. So the first time that someone is appointed in a senior management, there has to be at least 40% of women. Then, it's competence, but at least the first time, because you can't keep saying that there is no women available. No, you have to make them grow, and then they will be available for CEO position. But if you never make them grow, they will never be. So, slowly, but we still have only 25% of our ambassadors which are women, and only 17% of our consul general who are women. So it's not that ideal.
But I think the aim is there, because I was reading that they have preserved, and this year the policy is that 50% diplomats would be women. And at least that's a big thing. And one more thing I have to say as a lawyer, I've seen that women should have property in their name. You have a law which says that women will inherit the parents' property, but women seldom ask, because again the patriarchy comes in and they say, oh, she's greedy, or she's eyeing her father's property. But the biggest leveler is economic empowerment, so that is education and job. These two things can actually empower you, apart from quotas, of course.
So there was a small point I wanted to make here when we were talking about how she mentioned growing into spaces. So what I realized while we are all talking here is there was a time when biologically we know that men and women are different. There are certain strengths men have, there are certain strengths women have. There was a time when we both were doing our jobs and were respected in doing what we were doing, whether it was just taking care of the house or raising babies, but there was respect. Now that shifted, and the men who started going out thought they were more powerful and more stronger, and because they were getting the money they were providing, the women started giving them a little more love and affection in a way of giving power. So when a man would come home, there was food served, there was water served, and the man said, yes, this is who I am. Now that we were here and the men were here, we started seeing as women that, oh, I'm losing respect in these eyes. So now, if we make noise, that so what if I'm home, so what if I'm raising babies, and you are providing for the same family, I still deserve respect. This community does not understand this language. So what we women are doing now is we are going to their space and now telling them, see, I can also be who you are. So don't think of me as any less. And this is who I can be. I can be here also, and I can be here also. And all this discussion of giving us the equality, giving us the power in the space where men are now, is the only reason I'm seeing it as we want to let you know that just respect us. And the whole fight is about the equality we talk about. Equality is just rights and respect as a human being.
And okay, sociologists talk of culture of dominance world over. I think so.
I had a friend who wrote it during the lockdown when everyone was working from home about how the male colleagues would be sitting in one place, a child would come, water would come, and then the student said, you know what we need is working women? We need wives. We need wives.
was thinking in the beginning of our conversation, we were a lot talking about women for women, but I believe really that we have to talk with men about the cause of women. Because men are the decision makers now, but men have also, they have a wife, they have girls. There is a possibility to discuss all of this with men, and then you can really make progress. So I really think it's very important. We had an organization, for example, Mixity it's called, and it was an organization to promote gender diversity, and there were only women that were members. And we now really opened it and say, really, we want the he for she, which is a United Nations initiative. We would like really to be much more men, member of Mixity, and we see that we make more progress by doing that. And by discussing, for example, also with them and making them realize that there is an enormous unconscious bias. With women also, with men particularly. And once they realize and you discuss all of this, it helps a lot. So I think it has to be done with men. And so, yeah, next year, we should have half of men sitting there.
It's very informal. I just want you to say that we have some champagne waiting for us, but the champagne is getting even colder. Just get colder. Okay, alright. So, guys, we'll take one more question. Okay. No, I just think the mic and cover it. Good evening. My name is Isha. I'm a lawyer at the Bombay High Court. And I think there was something very important that Faye raised that needs to be talked about is how women in this country are increasing in terms of higher education, but the job levels are going down. Now, like ma'am here said rightly, that in Bombay it's a different case, but Bombay is one of the most forward cities in the country. If you look at the rest of the country, like in rural areas, you will see that after, for instance, we run an NGO in Eastern UP, and the girls, we talk to the girls and they say, oh, when we come back, we do the dishes, we clean, and our brothers study. So that is the reality in the country. But the thing is that we have to look at why women are still falling out of the labor force. So there's an American sociologist, Theodore Capto, and I'd like to share this with you. He says that the crux of the problem is that women in the labor market are still treated as secondary earners. They are not the primary earners, which is why when COVID happened, women lost their jobs first. If you look at the wage pyramid, women are always at the bottom. And when you talked about farmers, now we say men farmers, but you would know over 70% of farmers are women. Agricultural laborers are women. But how many of those women, coming to property, own the property? Only 14%. Only 14% women own agricultural land in this country, despite being over 70% women. So the problem is that today in India, an education degree is seen as so important for marriage. Parents want to send their daughters not because they necessarily want them to succeed, but because they get a better rishta. So we shouldn't be fooled by these higher education numbers because that's very important. Your numbers are really going up, but your jobs are going down tremendously. And one last point, I just want to talk because we work very closely with this, and we actually have a PIL in the Bombay High Court, and we're dealing with this, is sexual harassment at the workplace. Now, I think you're all women who've worked, so maybe you've experienced it in some form or the other, but I think that is a huge problem for women today. I have batchmates who are in law firms, and they say, it's usually the senior partners who will say something inappropriate, they'll touch you inappropriately, but the fact of the matter is, men have always been at the top, men are always making the decisions, so these men are indispensable to the company. But a woman at the bottom who is being sexually harassed, you can turn the law around, you can fix the ICC, you can fix that external member, and let's be done with her, let's terminate her. In fact, we have a client, she wants to write a book, Posh Sexual Harassment or Termination, because that is the story of her life. So I think as a country, these things are very important. I'm really happy you raised the issue of the labour market.
I would have a lot of questions, but I just had so much to say.
I'll have to leave. Thank you. I have a fundraiser that I'm organizing for our little girls tonight. It's a Zoom fundraiser, so I'll have to leave. But yeah, thank you.
We are a room full of very powerful women, and I just had to say this.
I'm a journalist with the Economic Times and have been very closely out of my personal interest tracking how women are doing in the corporate space. And like Franciska said, regulations and laws do help, reservation helps. India made it mandatory to have one woman on the board. What happens next? Companies make the promoters wives, promoters aunts, and promoters mothers the board of directors. Then our capital market regulator said that, okay, you need to have one independent woman director. That move, one would think, will go a long way. But what happened next? Closer to the deadline, there were lots and lots of companies which still didn't have a women director. I've personally spoken to many CEOs and they would tell me things like, they're not able to find women, we don't have enough women. Which is ridiculous because I can give them 5 days. So anyway, they appoint people, and if you look at the profile, there are former bankers, former CEOs, women CEOs, who are now holding board positions in multiple companies. So basically, there was an opening, but the appointment is restricted to a very, very small pool of women. It is also called a golden skirt phenomenon. It has happened in Norway, it has happened in Sweden. That there's just a small pool of women who are in circulation, if I may say so. As I was in making sure I get this mic.
I just want to introduce, we have here 2 students who will just say a few words about their projects. Actually, it's Vasumati, because you were saying that, the field of education is seen as a place for women where there are a lot of women, but I think it also depends on which sector. So they thought that there are very, very less women in the scientific field. And so they have started an initiative to develop, you will explain better than me, but just to have more young, girls trying to choose and to be scientists. So maybe you can introduce yourself and talk about your project.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Barkha. I'm 18 years old and I'm a 12th grade student right now. And I will be pursuing engineering at a university in fall this year. So the scientific women is a project that we started to encourage more girls to pursue the sciences, because we noticed that even at the school level, in our school, there was a certain divide between the subjects that girls chose to pursue themselves. So it wasn't just like our school offers equal opportunities to both boys and girls, but girls themselves choose to not pursue the sciences and more girls choose to pursue humanities. So we wanted to find out why that existed, and that's why we spoke to a lot of women who are pursuing the sciences and who are pursuing engineering and STEM fields like that. And they spared some time from their busy schedules to talk to both of us and tell us about their experiences and what they learned and the challenges they faced. And now we posted those stories on our website so that different people can see them as well, because I think, like it was just mentioned, the main need of to encourage more people to pursue science or support other women is to act as role models and to offer mentorships. So another aspect of our website is a mentorship program, which so we basically try to connect different girls who want to pursue a field with experts in that field, and hopefully this project can make a change and help more women pursue the sciences. I just had a question for the panel. So I will be pursuing engineering, which is largely a male-dominated field. So having experienced what you have experienced and knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to someone like me who is just starting to pursue?
Don't worry, you can just move forward. Don't even think about it. Just don't even think about it. Believe in yourself.
Can I just
say one thing. I think your femininity and the fact that you're a woman is a power. Wear it. I realized that for the first time when I started wearing saris as a young person working in a cultural organization, that I had suddenly had a voice. So there are certain systems that are in place and they work in certain ways. You need to figure out how to make them work for you. And in the 246 years that we are talking about, positive discrimination, affirmative action are pathways. But what can you do now? Whatever is in your power that you think you can do with your values intact, you must. That's what I would say. And I also want to mention one other thing. The lady has left, and speaking to you earlier, I was trying to dig through if there was a question in those comments that came from the panel, and there's also a question of visibility and erasure that we haven't spoken about yet. The fact that there are stories being told, perhaps Radhas and Ragmalas were made but not by women, and names have been erased, and what can we do to make those voices visible is an equally important part. So while you're on this journey, how do you take everybody else along with you is going to be an equally important contribution that you make to the larger cause.
So I would actually tell you, first of all, get yourself a coach and mentor right at the beginning. Make sure you have enough role models, because there are plenty of women engineers. In terms of plenty for you to hook up to. Not enough, okay? Don't misunderstand me. But plenty of women engineers who've made it, or for example, outsiders who made it in the engineering industry. When I set up my engineering center, I had a bastion of men, okay, telling me what was possible. And I wasn't even an engineer. I set up an R&D center which literally designs for Audi's future generation, okay, of vehicles. And what I'm trying to tell you is that coaching, networking, and mentoring works. You need all three of them. You need role models, you need people who are coaches. They could be women, they could be men, okay? But they need to believe in you. And first of all, you have to learn to walk like a man and talk like a man. And that has to be taught. Just body language, The first thing we teach them in the yoga is how you walk. One thing, let me finish. I'm not saying become like a man, but I'm not saying become like a man. But when you're aware of these sort of things, you don't disappear. You can be in a room and see the women disappearing physically.
I think the issue here is associating confidence as an attribute of a man and associating disappearing as an attribute of a woman. As a woman who has never disappeared, I want to point out that I don't walk like a man, but I don't disappear
Listen, you're not sitting like the way women are taught to sit. So, for what it's worth,
I don't think he wants to repeat.
I think
she was there that day, I think. Iconic, but Faye was.
You have to
I just want to change. Is what I'm saying. So one thing that since you asked, in my introduction, I specifically mentioned that I'm a daughter of Indian parents. My parents were not somebody who wore short skirts or who were out there working as my mom was. She was a homemaker. What she taught me was to be myself and be okay with who I am. Alright? And you were already there. You are in a school where everybody dreams to be. You are in a field where women usually don't want to go because, not because they don't believe in themselves, they don't even know what they are, but because they were not taught to see, nor they were shown. You've been shown that you can be who you want to be. So as ma'am said, just don't worry and just go ahead. I talk about sex and sexuality from a point of view of education. I do not shed clothes to tell people that sex is normal. I can say it any which ways, whether it's a woman or a man. All you need to do is know what you're doing, is what you want to do. And just as long as you're confident, anything goes for you. Anything goes. You lose your confidence. And God knows we have a more men.
Sure.
Then now
I started down
Sanjay is a karate champion. I think
the option, I was on a panel with Faye, so she's supposed to be the greatest goalkeeper in US women's soccer team.
and she fought for equal pay. She's the first person who sued the US soccer national team for equal pay. And since then, IWD, I think, offered her $20 million as a contract to shut her mouth. You know, Femta girl, shut your mouth and get in line. And she was making a case for why equal pay is important and was waxing eloquently about all of the awards that she's won. Look at all senior leadership positions. They are all white men. They tell us to show our meritocracy, while they are mediocrity at its best, right? So don't even entertain that crap about us having to prove our meritocracy when they are celebrating each other's mediocrity and in a circle mutual masturbation society for lack of a better word. So all of this about walk like a man, this like a man, no, they want to pit us against each other and keep trying to prove us. In my books, if you throw on a graph and show up, you are a winner. This system is not meant for us to survive and thrive. So be your own cheerleader. Be unapologetic about it. And there are brilliant women who have done this and will champion you for you, all of you, and all of you that makes you you. Because if you have to walk like a man, you're again perpetuating the system of mediocrity that we are trying to break out of. So seriously, and never take advice from those sitting on the sidelines eating popcorn. Ask women to show you their war scars and how they have fought, and then take advice from them.
Good afternoon from you, because you fought all the stuff that she was talking about.
Probably, I'm Kalpana Untitled and I'm a partner at the law firm Katan and Company. So I'm a lawyer, yes. And then you spoke about policies, etc. Let me share with you, and you mentioned about one woman on board, gossip, right? I was part of that change. And let me tell you, when I did the roundtable in 8 cities in India and met with CEOs, CFOs, starting with Bombay, Pune, Calcutta, Hyderabad, let me tell you, I have heard Calcutta promoters say, what you say, my sister and my mother can be part of the board, right? And I said, that's fine. Hyderabad said, no, we already do. But I'm saying, despite all this, we brought the change. Okay? At that time, the government told us, Ministry of Law told us that, look, we are propping independent work. There is a lot of pushback. We said, okay, in 5 years, we will go for independent work, which we did. Exactly. So I think slowly, we are getting there. Let's hope, right? You mentioned about social security. We give the comments, what you are mentioning. As a law firm, we are pioneers in that. Every draft laws that come, we do give comments, because if we don't, nobody will. So that should be our goal. Let's not just when the policy documents come, let's be part of the change. And I personally think, let's not discuss this only around 8th March. It's a continuous journey. That is the only way we will make the change.
Actually, this day is taking energy, like your cortex emits a fuel, so March is the same way.
Sorry, I'm just going to say something. Okay, hi. Is this working? Yes. Check. Okay. Hi, I'm Sandhya Shetty, and I am from a family of Shetty, which is a matriarchal community. I'm a model, I'm an actor, I'm a speaker, and I'm also a karateka. And I say this all because my entire career, especially karate, which has been 20 years, I have been badgered more men than women for the fact that being in the glamorous industry, I was always judged because of what I wear, the way I speak, and how bold I am. And today, I really want to tell all of you, let's not even get towards men first. I think we as women need to deconstruct what we have done to each other, because I don't come from an era of my mother. My mother was a homemaker and my father is into business, but trust me, we as women need to support women, and my first point goes to education, because gender sensitizing and education plays the most important role. And as a karateka, I always feel we are women and we are very, very strong, and we can walk the way we walk, and we are confident. We need to teach our girls to be powerful, not only where it comes to looks, where it comes to behavior, but also to be strong physically and mentally. I think most of us really defy that in our girl child, and that needs to change. The day India changes the approach about girl child, the sensitizing about what a male child and female child is, I think that will change the basic foundation for society, and that will be education first, schools. And I request all of you as mothers to change that for the girl child first, and then reach to the boy child, the men. The men are beautiful and the women are beautiful. We need to change the balance of the Shiv and the Shakti in the universe, and that's through education is what I strongly believe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to conclude because I think everyone's really thirsty all of these things. And just my 2 pence for the young lady who spoke. We're very proud to hear that you're so clear about what you want to do and you're so focused about what you want to do. I think that if you look around the room, you'll see that women who have, in any space, have war scars because it's hard. Women work harder than men in most spaces. I remember being in a room where there was a very powerful, very loud man I used to work with. He's still loud, I don't work with him anymore. Who sat across the room from me and told our CEO that Faye D'Souza should be fired because she's getting too ambitious. And I remember sitting there with a straight face, poker face. I finished that meeting. I then walked to my car. I got into the car. I shut the door. And I cried for 20 minutes because it was hard. I'm not going to lie to you, it's not going to be easy. But you can do it because everybody here has done it. There will be things that will be easier for you than it was for us because women who have come before you have opened those doors. And you will find new doors to open that we haven't gotten to up till now. And you will open those doors for the women who come after you. And that's where what feminism is. One generation that fought simply to work. One generation that came after that fought for jobs that was not just secretaries, but more than that. And then the women who fought to be taken seriously as individuals for their talent and their performance and not for anything else. You will come and change the world even further. And it's going to be hard and it's going to be amazing and you're going to cry and you're going to laugh and you're going to reach the very top. And it will be our pleasure to watch you do it. And all of the other women in your generation. So on that note, I want to wrap this up. I'll hand it back to Sonia to give us our final note.
Thank you so much for this very great and optimistic and and it gives me actually a transition. I just wanted to say one word. And add saying that maybe you're the generation equality, and it gives me a transition because I just wanted to announce we have the Generation Equality Forum, which is basically organized by UN Women, and it's co-hosted by Mexico and France. So it's going to be launched at the end of March 2021 in Mexico, and it will culminate in June in France. And it will be hosted by President Macron. And basically, the Generation Equality Forum is a civil society-centered global gathering for gender equality. And it will secure a set of concrete, ambitious, and transformative commitments to achieve immediate, irreversible progress towards gender equality. So it will be a big global forum. We hope to have it, in a hybrid form, partly physically and of course partly online, but it will allow civil society from all over the world to participate and also to have heads of states and government take legally binding quantitative objectives. So it was a small transition. So I'll stop here. I think we all want to drink some champagne and celebrate, but I will not do that, first of all, without thanking very warmly all our panelists tonight. Thank you so much for accepting to come here and discuss it. And a very, very special thanks to Faye D'Souza for accepting to be our moderator. And because we are women, we love beauty, refinement, and all the good things in life, not only champagne. I wanted, as a token of our gratefulness and appreciation, I wanted to offer you, it's a little jewel that many of us have been wearing tonight,
And it's a jewel which is designed, produced, and also sponsored tonight by Véronique Paulès, who is the founder of Ventia Luxury Consulting. And she has made this beautiful embroidered mask that some of us are wearing tonight, and I know that you liked it, so this is one from us. Thank you so much. And you are all, of course, I know we could have discussed for hours, but you're all welcome to stay. Here we have champagne, we have food, and please talk with each other and get to know each other and enjoy the evening. Thank you so much. You liked it? Yeah.